Everybody to the Revere High School Building Committee meeting number 61. Today is Wednesday, March 27th, 2024, and the time is 5:33 p.m. Linda, if you could do the roll call with our new updated members, welcomed.
I will do. I will start with Mike Picardi, who I don't see, so for now I'm going to note him as absent. Stacy Rizzo. I sworn I saw her. Maybe she came off. Absent for now.
For now, she'll be here.
I think that's her on the iPhone 7.
I was just going to say Stacy Rizzo. I think that was an acknowledgement. I'm going to take that as an acknowledgement.
I think
Okay.
she's present.
Susan Gravellisi.
Here.
Dr. Kelly.
Here.
Carl Svensson. Carl Svensson, I can see you. Can you hear us?
There he is.
Here.
Thank you. Christopher Bowen.
I'm here.
There you are. Thank you. Rich Biscay.
Here.
Thank you. Don Sermella.
Here.
Nick Rystrom.
Here.
Mayor Keith.
Claudia did put in the message that he was stuck in traffic, so I'm sure he'll be here momentarily.
Okay. I will note arrival time later. Tom Skorowski, welcome again. Here, thank you. I apologize, John. I am going to absolutely butcher your name.
I'm here.
Stamatopoulos, it's easy.
Stamatopoulos, is that it?
There you go.
She's had 20 years of practice, so she knows.
That's right. John was one of my students years ago, so.
Not fair, not fair. I'm still catching up. All right, well, welcome, John. Thank you for clarifying that. Anthony Cogliandro.
Here, nice job.
Thank you. Don Martelli.
Here.
Welcome, also new member. And Joshua Miranda is our last addition to the committee, who also emailed me earlier that he is not able to join today's meeting. He is working with the robotics club, who are making some great headways, I guess, in
the robotics team won their major competition at Revere High School last weekend and are preparing to move on to the regionals.
Excellent.
They are amazing.
Yeah.
That's a good excuse to be absent for the first meeting, I think. All right. Thank you, everyone. I'm going to start off with just cheat sheeting here on my agenda. We're going to start off with our first item, which is approval of meeting minutes from the February 28th meeting. I'm going to share my screen so people can see them. These are the revised ones that were sent out earlier this morning. We had a misspelling. For the record, we had forgotten to change. So the first one said acting mayor Patrick Keefe on this one. And then it also said on February 28th, and the second line, it said 2023 instead of 2024. So those were the only corrections from the original meeting minutes that were sent out yesterday from this morning. So if there are no other comments, we're looking for a motion to approve the meeting minutes from 2/28.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
You. And I will do a roll call for the approval. Stacy Rizzo.
Stacy must be having audio problems.
I think so. Susan Gravellisi.
Yes.
Dr. Kelly.
Yes.
You. Carl Svensson,
Yes.
Christopher Bowen,
Yes.
Rich Viscay,
Yes.
Don Sermella,
Yes.
Nick Rystrom,
Yes.
Tom Skorowski.
Yes.
I don't know, John, I don't believe you were at the last meeting, so if you weren't, you can feel free to abstain from voting on the meeting minutes if you weren't. This goes for all the new members if you weren't at the previous meeting.
Yeah, I wasn't a member at the time, so I'll abstain from voting.
Okay, perfect. And Councilor Anthony Cogliandro
Abstain.
and Don Martelli.
I was also not a member, so I will abstain.
Awesome, thank you very much. That takes care of meeting minutes. Next item on our agenda are the February invoices, just going through some housekeeping. So we had invoices for, I'm gonna change and hopefully my screen changed to show the actual invoices.
There you go.
Okay, perfect. So for February, we had invoices for left field, invoice number 37 in the amount of 21,000. We had Perkins Eastman's invoice number 36 for $40,398.20. And we had Consigli's invoice number 14 for $25,440. So invoices for February.
I can't hear you. I'm listening.
$838.20.
What? Yeah, but I have a bag that put it in first.
Let me see if I can.
Someone needs to mute.
That should do it.
I'm sharing the screen, so I'm a little handicapped here. And just as we typically just show the overall project budget. So this is the summary of budget that was in February's monthly report, where we have spent to date 80.7% of the total feasibility study budget, which was the revised budget of $4,300,000. So these invoices that we have for approval tonight are part of that 80% spent to date.
Linda, can I just add some clarity for the new members?
Sure.
2 million of that 4.3 was the original feasibility study that we did. And then the 2.3 million was for the second feasibility study that we did on the existing site. Just so that people don't think we spent 4.3 on just this last round of work.
Right, thank you. And also just to clarify these, what we've spent to date, it doesn't distinguish which one is which. So we've spent out of both budgets at this point. I'm going to switch back to the invoices. So at this point, we're looking for a motion to start approving these invoices. And for our new members, we typically go through these and do a separate motion for each invoice. So there'll be a lot of roll calling for me for a minute here. So just bear with us. So we're going to start with left field's invoice number 37. Do we have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. So starting roll call with Stacy Rizzo. I think Stacy is, I think we might have lost her actually. Susan Grevalisi,
Yes.
Dr. Kelly,
Yes.
Carl Svensson,
Yes.
Christopher Bowen,
Yes.
Rich Viscay,
Yes.
Don Sermella,
Yes.
Nick Rystrom,
Yes.
Tom Skorowski,
Yes.
John Stopoulos, I'm sorry,
Yes.
Anthony Cogliandro,
Yes.
Don Martelli
Yes.
is absent. Thank you very much. Moving on to Perkins Eastman's invoice number 36. in the amount of $40,398.20. Do we have a motion to approve?
I'll make that motion. Carl?
Second.
Second.
Thank you, Carl. And
By Susan.
yeah. And we're gonna do another roll call. I'm gonna skip Stacy because I don't think she's here anymore. Susan Gravellisi,
Yes.
Dr. Kelly,
Yes.
Carl Svensson,
Yes.
Christopher Bowen,
Yes.
Rich Biscay,
Yes.
Don Ciaramella,
Yes.
Nick Rystrom,
Yes.
Tom Skorowski,
Yes.
John Stamatopoulos,
Yes.
Anthony Cogliandro,
Yes.
Don Martelli.
Yes.
Thank you. And lastly, we have Consigli's invoice number 14 in the amount of $25,440. Do we have a motion to approve?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
Thank you. And for roll call, Susan Gravellisi,
Yes.
Dr. Kelly,
Yes.
Christopher Bowen. Oh, sorry,
Yes.
Carl Svensson, sorry, apologies.
Yes.
And Christopher Bowen,
Yes.
Rich Biscay,
Yes.
Don Ciaramella,
Yes.
Nick Rystrom,
Yes.
Tom Skorowski,
Yes.
John Stamatopoulos,
Sorry, I'm saying yes. I couldn't unmute it. Yes.
okay, sorry, thank you. Anthony Cogliandro
Yes.
and Don Martelli.
Yes.
Right, thank you very much. That is it for the housekeeping items. I'm going to give everybody a break from listening to me for a second and Brian, have you take over?
Yeah, so I'm not sure, Dr. Kelly or anyone else. We had school building committee roster update plugged here. I think we understand the changes that have already happened. Is there any further roster changes to discuss? We had this plugged just in case.
Yeah, no, I think that's it. I was thinking that we could introduce the new members or maybe give them each a minute to talk about who they are in case others don't know. And so I just thought that it would be worth
good
it to
idea.
take a minute to do that.
I'm gonna just sort of go in the order I see them. Council President Cogliandro, you want to start?
A full minute, huh? Anthony Cogliandro, Ward 3 City Councilor, Council President, been involved with the high school project from a councilor perspective since 2022. Excited to be a part of the team and get this high school built. Thank you.
Excellent, thanks. Don Martelli is the next one I'm seeing here.
Hi, folks. Don Martelli. I have put one kid through the high school who's now studying to be a nurse at Merrimack College. The second one wants to be a forensic scientist and is a junior. So my joke about not being a grandparent when the high school is built, I'm hoping that actually is a thing because that'll be kind of too quick. But anyways, former reporter for the Boston Globe, worked in public relations and marketing for 20 plus years. A lot of my work is with real estate developers. I've been on the community engagement side of permitting to the point of about 23 million square feet. So Market Street, Linfield, that was me before it was a golf course. So I'm very familiar with this process. Looking forward to seeing this add value to our community. And great job so far.
Thanks, Don. How about John Stamatopoulos?
Hi, folks. John Stamatopoulos. So I'm a Revere resident. I have 3 teenagers here in the Revere school system now. I've been an active and vocal participant here in the schools for about 10 years since my oldest joined RPS, so was a governing board member for the Paul Revere for about 7 years, and parent committee for the GMS, and now really grateful to be part of the high school building committee. Professionally, healthcare exec for about 25 years, entrepreneur residence for Northeastern University. So working closely with ed tech companies across the U.S., just trying to give these kids a building and some programming that'll benefit them for the rest of their life. So thanks for the opportunity to join the team.
Thank you, John. And last but certainly not least, Tom Skorowski. Well, you've been to another meeting, but I think we should do the same.
Yeah, appreciate it, Brian. Hey, everybody. Tom Skorowski, Chief of Planning and Community Development for the city of Revere. And in another life, I used to be an educator. So for me, this kind of molds both of my professional experiences together. And excited to work on this project, bringing this important community amenity and asset to the city in a part of Revere that's really critical nexus for us of economic development, housing, and transportation planning. So I'm happy to provide that insight and input as to how things for this project sit within the broader planning work we're doing as a city.
Great. Thanks, Tom. I think those were the 4 new ones, Linda, correct?
There's also Joshua Miranda, who
Sorry about that.
was not able to make it today. Maybe Dr. Kelly, you can give a brief.
Sure.
statement.
So Josh is a physics teacher at the high school, but he also is a supervisor of our robotics program. He's incredibly dedicated to the students and a phenomenal teacher, and lives in Revere. So is dedicated to the community, not just in the school department, but across the board. And as you mentioned earlier, Linda, Josh isn't able to make it tonight because he is engaged with the robotics team as they continue their endeavor toward, last year we came second in the world out of 61 different countries competing. And so hopefully we're going to top this year and get that golden ticket.
Great. Thank you. Those were all the new members. Thank you.
Okay. We're going to move on to agenda item 5 then. This is a quick discussion and ultimately a motion that I wanted to queue up here. As we noted at previous building committee meetings, we're not full bore into the next phase yet. That'll happen after the debt authorization vote. We're sort of scheduling the design development phase to start in earnest in June. However, we are working on site development and permitting. Those items are underway and are funded by the remaining values for schematic design in Perkins Eastman, Left Field, Consigli's contract. So for the permitting items, this is really just an update. We're not having any motions about them. Those are already covered financially. We have reapplied to Revere Conservation Commission to get the ANRAD part of the first step done. There's a little bit of back and forth about getting that peer review scheduled, but it looks like we'll be on the peer review will be complete and will be on the agenda for a hearing in June, possibly July. But that process is going smoothly. We're also kicking off some meetings this week that are the tip of the iceberg with the MIPA process. And I think probably at next month's meeting, we'll go into a little more detail about sort of a summary of how these meetings might all lay out. The MIPA process is going to involve some public hearings, similar to what we did early in the project, where we set up a big Zoom meeting. We have translators live, and we invite as many people as we can get from the city to attend, abutters, neighbors, other citizens. So those processes are right at the beginning, and we'll jump into more detail for them in the coming months. The piece that we wanted to cover tonight is using remaining funds that are in that $4.3 million feasibility budget that Linda had on the screen. There's still over, I should have had the exact number, $200-something thousand that's uncommitted in there. Another item that we don't have covered in the design team's contract right now, like we do permitting, is to do what's called the phase 2 site investigations down on that site. These are geo-environmental investigations, basically digging a bunch of holes, doing a bunch of soil testing. It's items that allow us to tighten up the estimate and to really get better resolution on what's under the ground and what it's going to cost in the site prep phase to fix. I'll quickly, I know this went out with the, this is what's on the screen right now is sort of a scripted motion, but and just as a reminder, whenever we allocate new money into the OPM's contract, the design team's contract, which is the case here, there's a contract amendment and there's what's called a budget revision request that simply moves the money from one line into, in this case, the design team's line. So ultimately, we're looking for a motion to approve Perkins Eastman contract amendment number 2 and its associated budget revision request number 6 for phase 2 geo-environmental site investigations totaling $63,122.40. The proposal went out to the committee for this work, and I'm not sure, Dan, if I gave really a high-level summary. Is there anything you want to just sort of add to the detail of what this entails, what a phase 2 site investigation entails?
No, you've got it right. That's the phase 2 is generated in large part by the phase 1 results. So the phase 1 is like more of a research and paperwork activity. And when you finish that, there are sometimes questions and open items that we don't know enough about, which require testing and sampling. And this site has several areas that that consultant feels need to be tested and monitored, and to give us a much better idea or a clearer picture of what's actually there, which hopefully at the end will narrow our exposure to the costs of any remediation or lack thereof on the site.
And Brian, just to pitch in, from the previous budget slide that we have up, we had $268,048 left. So we're taking this proposed money out of that 268,000.
And I think it would be from the other category into the designer category, if I'm not mistaken. Yep.
That is correct.
And that, again, that movement of money is what triggers the BRR, the budget revision. So anytime we have to move money around, there's an associated budget revision with it. The only other thing I'll note is we have met once so far. We'll keep doing it with Nick Rystrom, Don Chiaramella, Chris Chiaramella, Carl, to really start digging into what's going on down at that site from a utility perspective. So we're sort of feel like we're pushing in all directions on this site between permitting, understanding utilities, getting ahead with National Grid, getting ahead with the city's current use of the site, and now with this proposal, getting a little more familiar with what is underground at that site. I'll pause here. Says anybody have any questions on this proposal and proposed motion?
I have one question, Brian.
Sure.
Of the $263,000 other funds that are available, of the 4.3 million, this would be $63,000 of that. The remaining $200,000, is that going to get us to the point where a debt authorization may be voted? I don't want to get into a situation where we start deficit spending, so just want to get a better idea of the remaining funds and existing appropriations for the 3 vendors.
Sure. And I don't want to necessarily put my foot in my mouth because something new might come up in the coming weeks, but I don't think any of the, Linda, you said 260 something thousand. So let's just say after this, there's still around 200 left in the feasibility study. I don't have anything forecasted that we're going to need to spend that on between now and the debt authorization vote. Well, actually, with one exception, Rich, what we talked about earlier, the potentially running the peer review, Concom peer review bill essentially through the project budget. So other than the 7,700 for the peer review and this, we don't have anything else forecasted. If something comes up, we'll bring it back to the committee. But as of right now, I think that we end up finishing the $4.3 million feasibility study with upwards of 200,000 and maybe a little bit less remaining. And, you know, that money it's up to the city. That could roll into the future project, or that money could just be sort of taken off the books.
Okay, great, Brian. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So I'll make a motion to approve Perkins Eastman contract for phase 2 for the amount of $63,122 and I believe 40 cents.
I will second that motion.
You. I will do the roll call, starting with Stacy Rizzo,
Yes.
Susan Gravellisi,
Yes.
Dr. Kelly,
Yes.
Carl Svensson,
Yes.
Christopher Bowen. We lose Christopher.
Yes.
Yes, you are. Thank you. Rich Viscay,
Yes.
Don Cermella,
Might
Don,
be
you're
on
on
mute, Don.
mute.
I'm sorry, I couldn't unmute. Yes.
Thank you. Nick Reister
Yes.
and Tom Skorowski,
Yes.
John Stamatopoulos,
Yes, ma'am.
you, Anthony Cogliandro,
Yes.
and Don Martelli.
Yes.
Excellent.
That is it.
Let's see. Looking at the agenda item, next agenda item 6, schematic design submission follow-up and MSBA status. So as the committee knows, we submitted schematic design at the end of February at the deadline leading into the April 24th board meeting. We've had a lot of back and forth with the MSBA staff and team. And today, the project team, including Dr. Kelly and Principal Bowen and Mayor Keefe and Claudia, attended what's called the Facilities Assessment Subcommittee meeting, where we do a brief presentation that they prescribed to us of what they want to hear about the project. And all I can really say is that it went phenomenally. I'm not even really sure there was actually a question. There were some comments, but we were all ready for questions. There weren't any. I will say, a couple of years ago when we went to the FAS meeting with this project, we got a similar reception, and I'll say it's not usually typical of projects going through the FAS. There's usually a million questions, and even today's meeting ran behind. We got started a little late because they were grilling a vocational school with a whole lot of questions about the ed plan. So I thank Dr. Kelly and the design team and Chris and everybody for getting that stuff prepped. But perhaps you want to say a few words, Dr. Kelly or someone else, but the meeting went fantastic. And that's just an interim step in getting us to MSBA staff recommending the MSBA board approves the project on April 24th.
I think that you covered it, Brian. I will add that I got nervous listening to that project that went ahead of us because there were so many questions. And I was like, oh, goodness, but they didn't have a question other than to praise the district and the city for struggling through some challenging times to get to where we are right now today. And I remember Mary Piketty, who is the chair of the MSBA, saying at the end, we look forward to recommending your project. So that was really encouraging.
Agreed. And we still, let's see, let me just go through my other notes. Tomorrow, they have scheduled another step here, a staff level step, not a meeting level step, is tomorrow they have scheduled what's called a project scope and budget conference call. That's when they start to show their cards in terms of the pending grant. So we'll go through that with them. That usually results in a little more back and forth between OPM design team and MSBA staff. And otherwise, we owe them the approved meeting minutes from tonight, which I'm going to probably, once they're available with the town clerk, we'll drive in there, and that starts really checking the boxes of at that point we're imminent for the April 24th board meeting. And I have high confidence that the project's going to get in and out of that meeting with an MSBA approval. Any MSBA sort of process questions or? and let me also say for the new committee members, if a lot of this sort of wonky MSBA stuff and process stuff, if you'd like, feel free to reach out to me. I can get on the phone with you folks or Zoom or meet up with you just to sort of debrief you. It's a very prescriptive process. It's confusing. It'll never go away. For the duration of the project, we'll always have MSBA protocol. So I just offer any new folks or current folks, you want more insight, just reach out to me and I can spend some time directly with you. If there's no other questions, we'll move on to agenda item 7, which is the last item before public comment and any new business. We wanted to talk about working groups as we move forward, as we start planning to move forward, both in site development, permitting. What I just wanted to queue up before this is that we call these working groups for a reason, and they are not publicly posted meetings. No decisions get made at these working group meetings, no motions get made. They're simply getting the right people in the room with the right team members to go down wormholes, basically. And anything we discuss at working group meetings comes back to this committee. If there's any recommendations, they come back to this committee. They are not subcommittees. We basically are looking for what's best for us is if we can assign a singular point person for a few topics that we'll put on the screen and talk about, but then anyone else can attend as long as we don't come close to triggering a quorum. And I don't know the new magic number for a quorum. We'd have to just look at that, but the idea is that there's a lot of hours we need to spend talking about interior design, site design, athletic use of the site, sustainability, mechanical items, and we would be having public meetings 3 times a week, and they would last 5 or 6 hours to go through all this detail. So again, no motions, no decisions. It's all just working with the consultants, bringing all that info back here. Susan, I see your hand up.
Thank you, Brian. Just curious, because I know the last time when we were moving forward and I was on like the exterior working group, are these the groups that you'll be forming currently? My request is to remain on that group. I was the chair of that group and we had a great flow going. Myself, Don Chimello, Mike Picardi, and I had Rich Galucci and Lena Marie Rockwood working with Dawn, I can't pronounce your name for Perkins.
Yellow.
And I know Dawn will admit, like, we put a lot of hours into that, and we were on the floor of one of the rooms in City Hall, like with all of the different stones and bricks and glass, and so I would like to have that committee remain the same if I can request that. And the other committee I was on, we hadn't really started a flow yet, so whichever you choose, but I would like that committee to remain the same if possible.
Just to jump in there too, we have 15 members on the SBC committee, so anything 7 or more will trigger that quorum.
And for the record, Richie and who was the other woman, Susan? They were
Lena Marie.
Lena Marie, right? They're both.
They were just like as high school,
representatives. Exactly.
Representatives. They weren't committee members on the school building committee.
Towards a quorum.
It was, yes. So it was their input as being, educator and, directors.
And they were very helpful. So
yeah, it was a great.
We agree with you, Susan.
Yeah, we had a great flow going, Dawn.
We sure did.
And if I can just add, a good strategy for us with these working groups is if there are 1 or 2 school building committee members who can lead the group, but we can engage other members of the school community
Yes.
where appropriate, so that we can increase the voice at the table. And that could include students, it could include teachers, it could include parents, whatever's appropriate for each of the working groups.
And I think I interrupted Christopher Bowen, had his hand up.
No, I was just going to ask, I think what has been answered was, does it have to be just folks who are on the school building committee, or can we bring in others to do exactly what Dr. Kelly just said? And so I'm excited to hear that's the case.
Exactly, which is great.
Chris, with these being working groups, is that we don't have to form committees, bring people onto the committee. So really, it's a few key building committee contacts, and then really anyone else. It could be someone from the school, could be, and there's going to be certain scenarios where it's someone from the city, could be someone with expertise that you all know of. For example, city councilor Juan Jaramillo has expressed interest in being on sustainability and mechanical systems. So I think that's one that we've always sort of had Carl be the point person on. And Juan has expressed the desire to sort of participate in some of those. So I think the one with Susan and Don, was that mostly exterior working group, I think, is all set. If anybody would like to participate in that, reach out to me, reach out to Susan. We'll include you on the meetings. But the exterior working group is probably the one that burnt the most rubber and got a lot done. So it's really, if you'd like to join, let us know. If we get near that magic number of 7, I'll email the group of people and say, someone's going to have to sit out. But again, we're not making decisions. We're talking through the options.
Brian, do you have a list of the working groups that you could show to everybody so they could kind of think about where their area of expertise might lie?
Yeah, it's hold on a second. I'm going back to Perkins Eastman's work plan here, which I think the best place to look. Let me just zoom in a little bit. So for these sort of user interviews, the police fire EMS is sort of its own animal. We'll always have Carl involved with that. A lot of that will also have Principal Bowen. At times we might need Dr. Kelly involved, but I think what we're really talking is exterior focus group. That's what we already sort of looked at. An interior focus group that I think should both have, it should be school centric for the kids on the participants from the committee. But that's really getting into the interior use and design of the building. So I think interior, exterior, site, and campus sort of athletics, I would group into one. And then MEP, that's mechanical, electrical, plumbing. So the systems and sustainability are the other. So I think we're really talking interior, exterior, site, and sustainability / mechanical.
Hey, Brian, our team has another suggestion. Maybe it's a subgroup of the interior, but and we can definitely, anyone who might be interested, we can show what we did at Lowell High School, but kind of a historic information gathering. There's so much we want to do within the school to celebrate Revere, celebrate the students, celebrate diversity, celebrate all the different aspects of the school and the students and the history that even Revere Beach and Wonderland, and there's so much there. There's a lot of content. So what we've done in the past is have a group that's willing to go to the archives, go to the library, do the research, bring it back to our team, and our team distills it into graphics and celebration within the building. And we can, we can do a quick thing on like an example of what we did at Lowell High School. I wish it was built already so that we could show you, but it's kind of a phased project that's underway. So some of it's done, some of it's not. But if there's a group that's interested in that sort of history research, then that would be wonderful to have those people and anyone you might know within the city that has, interest in that or history that they can.
Well, I was going to say there's a pretty robust historical society in Revere.
Right.
And they work a lot with our history classes at Revere High School. I would like to see folks from both of those groups, students and from the historical society, engage with that.
Perfect. And if they can tie it to their curriculum, even better.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love it. So I'm just planting that seed. It is early, but it does take time. So if we want to, maybe in the next 6 months or something, get that started and get those folks kind of starting to research, that could be a really cool project within a project. So just wanted to plant that seed.
Okay. And I think that's, I think those are all great ideas. I think I still know a few people at the Historical Society. We can I can sponsor a few chats with them, but the interior, as Don alluded to, will probably get kicking a little bit later than the exterior. So I think we have a little bit of time to focus on that. But maybe what we'll do is talk to a few people at the school and at the Historical Society, come back next month and sort of try to button up that interior slash branding, I think I'm going to call it in general, group, if that's all right.
Yeah, that works. You could call it graphics branding or history graphics branding. Like we call it like environmental graphics, but there's more to it than just graphics. It's there's research and content that needs to be developed.
Yep.
And I'm seeing that Don Martelli put in the chat that he's on the board of trustees at the library.
Perfect.
So if he can be a resource, it sounds like he's willing to help out. So anyway, if they're, throw your hat in the ring or reach out to Diane or Chris or Brian, and we can get that group underway as well. And Chris has his hand up.
Can I just ask clarification on, so we've done a lot of work already about the layout of the building, how different spaces like programmatically allocated around, and that was what was submitted and what was presented, over the past few weeks to MSBA. How does the interior working group and the stuff that comes out of that interior group, how is that different from, let's say, like how space is used? I don't know if that question makes sense. Like, is it that the layout of the building is essentially what we've submitted, and that this group is talking more about like the aesthetic of the interior space as opposed to the actual
That's it,
layout,
Chris.
or is
Yeah,
there?
it's
Okay.
aesthetics and
So
materials
it's not the case that this group that will come back and say, oh, well, actually, we think this room should be over at this place on the
correct.
second
That
floor.
is not the
Okay.
charge of this working group.
That group is done. That has been set.
It's decisions, Chris, like what materials do we want to use for the flooring? So it's
Gotcha.
a combination of what's going to look good, but also what's feasible and what makes sense in a school. Like we're not going to put hardwood floors in, for example, right? So,
Right.
Things like that. But it's also color schemes, and do we want to color code the floors? Like, is everything on the first floor going to be red and the second floor white and the third floor blue, and decisions of that nature.
Gotcha. Okay. Thank you.
And Chris, just to reinforce the point you're making, there will be future focus group meetings similar to what we had in the past that will dive into the spaces and how they're laid out. And I know you spoke about how some of I think it was the house offices
Yeah,
or
I guess
how
that's
they're organized.
I'm selfishly asking because my interest is in like how school programming intersects
and I knew
with
that.
the layout of the school, and I just wanted to make sure I get myself on the right working group.
Yep.
That
So
was
those
all.
are focus group
That was
meetings, and
that.
those happen with the users of each space, and that will come around as well. These are like working group, and I know it's nuance in what we're calling them, but this is more for like, what the building will look and feel like, not about where the spaces are and how they're used.
Understood. Thank you.
And I'll just add one more piece to that. Like when there are unique spaces, like when it comes time to talk about the office suite for a team group, right? We will talk to those team groups and say, what makes sense in terms of how many different spaces do you need? Do you need 2 separate conference spaces in case you have an IEP meeting and a student who needs some intervention? Or does it make more sense only to have one, right? So we've got the big rectangle of space identified in the plan right now, but how that breaks out internally, we'll talk to the people who are actually going to be using those spaces to determine what that should be within reason. Like everybody's not going to get a unique space, but
right, of course. Thank you.
Agreed. That's going to apply to really all these. Well, for all of these groups, regardless who from the building committee is on them, we're always going to be pulling in the appropriate staff. For example, the site and campus athletics, Coach Shea is going to be all over that. We'll talk to if somebody from Parks and Rec there, et cetera. So we will always bring in the people who whose role it is to know how these spaces work. So I think we've got a good idea on exterior. That one will start heating up a little sooner. We've got some volunteers for interior, and again, a lot of those sort of historic, thematic level items. Sounds great, Stacy, Dawn. What about sort of site / The site could partially be public circulation through the site. It could be use of fields, amenities for fields. Does anyone, again, outside of the athletic director and, Chris will be involved with that. Carl will be involved with that. If anyone is interested in site meetings, let us know.
That just to put on record for the people who are from the city, I'd love to see Michael Hinojosa on that team because
His name was escaping me. Yep.
Yep.
Perfect. And then I think finally, mechanical, electrical, plumbing, sustainability, et cetera. That one's probably the most in detail. There might be some topics people are interested in that really does get really granular with the engineers, but and again, it'll certainly go through Carl and a lot of the folks from the city, Don, Nick, et cetera. But people that are going to be maintaining this building. But if anyone is interested in participating in that, let us know. Otherwise, I'll be reaching out to Juan on the council and keeping him posted on those meetings.
Brian, I should have said Frank Shea as well on the fields and athletics.
Yep.
And on the police, fire, and EMS, can you talk a little bit more about that so we can think about who's right to be on that team?
Yeah, that's we'll often start with fire chief, police chief. That's the protocol that we always like to follow, and I think the correct protocol. But Carl will always be involved, and that process is driven mostly by police and fire and what they want to see on the site in terms of emergency response. But it has to dovetail with both school maintenance staff and school administrative staff, because ultimately that group's going to want to talk a lot about security, site security, building security, emergency response, etc. As we get into the details of those meetings, a lot of that will not be necessarily regurgitated at these meetings when we get into the real nuts and bolts of security. But this one is, to me, mostly driven by police, fire, maintenance staff, and admin staff who are running the building. However, if anybody has experience there or with EMS, emergency response type stuff, we could gladly include you in the process. But often the additional users are folks the police and fire chiefs want to see participate in that group.
Thank you.
Brian, just a suggestion for the campus athletics. I'd like to see the junior ROTC program possibly involved in that as well. They're a big user of the gym as well as robotics. I know we have Josh on the board now, which is great, but I don't think anybody asked me about this new building more than one of the sergeants from the junior ROTC. It's daily. If I got any updates on the space usage and how his team's going to fit into that. So I'd love to get their input, because it seems like they're chomping at the bit to kind of tell you what they need for their spaces. And there's little things in these gyms that, nooks and crannies that they use all the time for their drills and their shooting competitions and all the things that they do that should get worked into our plan if possible.
That is a great suggestion, and also a great example of what we're looking for, the kind of input we're looking for.
Brian, that's Sergeant Major Calendar, who is in charge of the JROTC. So he's the right person, and he's expressed interest in participating. I told him the need for him will be coming soon.
Mm-hmm.
He was in the visioning, no? Is he the guy I'm thinking of? Yeah.
Yeah, he worked on the visioning team.
Yep.
Yeah, so he'll be great.
Excellent.
Okay, and this is something we'll recap on a monthly basis as these develop. Like I said, they're going to really hit the ground running at different speeds. It'll probably seem slow for the next month or two. Again, we're really trying to get through this MSBA process, permitting, site focused. But as we get back into these user group meetings, it's just nice to know who in advance we want to schedule meetings with. Dawn, Dan, any other sort of user group? I mean, I think that pretty much. You have any other ideas for specific groups? Or I think at least for now that's good. Maybe as more specific items come up in the future, we might create a new one of these. But you feel like we're covered for now?
I think I was going to say exactly what you said, which is for now, I think that's a good starting point and gives us a broad brush, glimpse at the project as far as the building, the site, the systems, the safety. So, but there could be others that come up that we want to get more input on. So we'll just communicate that.
Okay. Any questions on these sort of user groups?
I have one more suggestion on the police,
Sure.
fire, and EMS, that we include somebody from the Revere Board of Health.
Good idea. Got it. And again, if any ideas come to you outside of this meeting, again, email them to me, text me, call me, whatever. No idea is a bad idea in terms of this sort of outreach. This is how we end up getting a building that works for the school in the city.
Brian,
I do
don't
have
know
one
if-
other, sorry.
Yep.
Sorry, Linda. And
Sorry,
Brian.
I was just going to mention that in specifics, the safety and security groups might in the future might not become as public as some of
Yeah.
the other user groups. So it's not that we're forgetting about them. They're working in the background, but for obvious safety concerns, those user group meetings might not be as recapped in the same way as the others, just as a reminder.
I was going to suggest, it's come up a few times that students participate, Dr. Kelly and Chris. I don't know if you want to form like a formal student group that, whether it's like a student building committee or something, maybe you include a few middle schoolers that, or students that would actually, be able to enjoy this building once we complete the process, but just something to consider. It could be a fun way for them to follow along. Maybe they participate or listen to some of these meetings, and then we include them along the way in not just interior decisions or, athletic decisions, but in the whole process so that they're learning. And then they can have voice and, share their input along the way so that they can then, and maybe it's like your student council or something, you have members from that can, then take what we're doing and feed it back to their, the fellow students, and just something to think about, because that often is fun for them, a learning experience. I don't know if there's a way to tie it to the curriculum, but we've had a lot of success, taking what students are saying and how they're participating and actually, including their input in the design of the building. And it's not too late to do that. There's still so much design that's happening.
And our middle school kids complete a civics project every year. It's required as part of their curriculum, and I could see this being a project where middle school kids from each of the 3 middle schools, as you said, participate in the meetings, and maybe this is almost like this is their civics action project.
Yeah.
So that then
That's
they can
great.
report out on it. And maybe they can get community service points for participating as well. So we can
Yeah.
definitely work on that.
That's great. And then, as construction starts happening and whatnot, they can be involved in, whether it's listening to construction meetings or getting tours once in a while, like, they can definitely learn from this experience. So maybe think about with Chris how you might organize that. And we've definitely seen like student building committees. My daughter's on one in my town. She's a 5th grader, but they're building a middle school. So she'll, in the next 2 years get to enjoy it. So, that's kind of a fun process for them. They meet once a month, like amongst themselves with the principal, and then they participate in the, they see construction, go to the, the ribbon cutting, that sort of thing. So something to think about. It is fun for the students. It would be nice to have students that will be around for a duration. Not that I'm saying, seniors and juniors can't have voice right now, because they certainly can, but they may be in college by the time.
And I think there's value in having a mix, right? Because the middle school
Absolutely.
kids don't understand what high school is yet.
Correct.
So having some juniors and seniors who can understand what high school is and what would be better for them in high school is beneficial as well.
Right. And for those guys to say, "Hey, we're not going to get to enjoy it, but for your benefit, here are the things we think you might need or you might want, or how this is actually done once you get to high school." That's a great point.
Don, one of the, and Dr. Kelly, one of the ideas I had is to start engaging the approximate grade level that's going to be the first, hopefully if it stays on schedule or close, the first group of kids who are going to enter this school as a 9th grade. I don't know if that's now a 4th grader or a 5th grader, but those are kids who could carry their, experience all the way right into the building from the grade they're in now. And I'd love to see, I know it's a younger group now, but as this project grows, they're going to be growing with it. And I'd love to see them start at an elementary level of getting engaged with the building. And as it grows and as they grow, they stay engaged in the process, and they'll be, that same group, the first in the door and probably the first graduating class of the building. So there's some lower level engagement that we could do with the younger kids.
That's a great idea. And I think they're in 5th grade right now.
Yeah. And I have a 5th grader. That's my daughter that's she's capable of having these conversations, participating in meetings and doing some homework for them. So there's no reason we couldn't get 5th graders involved. I love that.
It'd be the
I'm
only
noting
kids
Don
not lost.
Martelli has his hand up.
A couple thoughts. One, having the students involved in some way, shape, or form solves 3 things. And one, we are developing a product and the end user are those kids, right? So you need them involved in some way, shape, or form, not to mention their parents at that 5th grade level. 2, you're exposing them to careers in the real estate development field, which goes back to workforce development and the training that they can go through, not just, going to college and going into a particular field, but this gives them some professional development opportunities. And 3, being the PR guy, it gives us an opportunity to create stories around having 5th graders involved in developing a new school. I mean, the TV stations would eat this crap up, which means it gives the city some good visibility, some goodwill, and it eliminates the hassle of parents saying, well, you're building this school without us having any more involvement. So I think it does a lot of check boxes. So great idea.
I love that, Don. And I should point out, I literally just played it yesterday for a conference I spoke at. Students in Easton, high school students, WBZ interviewed them about their participation, and they're such fun clips to listen back to. So, and they loved being part of the process, even though they didn't get to enjoy the building. And one of them wants to be an architect after the whole process. So to your point, we see it, we live it, we want that participation because there's nothing more exciting for these students to see than, being part of this process. And then when the building goes up, it's, their eyes just get really big.
A photo opportunity of the entire 5th grade class at the site with shovels would be fantastic. Right? I'll take on dealing with the media. I can do that.
All right. Do you want to help Chris organize a group? Do you want to be part of it?
Fine with me. Fine with me. Happy to help.
You sound like a perfect candidate.
I always start with yes. That's my biggest fault. But sign me up.
And that actually sort of gave me a side thought, not entirely related, Dawn, but I think as we get further into the permitting process, again, there's a lot of public outreach, and that's going to roll into bidding and site work. We'll be doing a lot of talk about construction updates, website, live updates, keeping people posted, even down to the whole, this is what next month's going to feel like. Once we really have a few hundred, at least maybe 1,000 or 2 people working on that site on a day-to-day basis. So your expertise, I think we might pull you into some of those items as well.
I'd be disappointed if I wasn't.
Excellent. Okay, that was very helpful. Any other comments on working groups? If not, I think we can move on to public comment. I'm not positive if we have anyone from the public here. Name and address for the record. If there are any public comment. I don't see hands. Going once. Okay, no public comment. How about any new business from the committee? If none, we could seek a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Thank you,
Second.
Dr. Kelly.
Second.
Thank you, everybody.
Motion
night.
accepted. Have a great evening, everyone.
You too.
Recording stopped.